It is anticipated that the vehicle in question will be none other than the highly acclaimed and exceptionally powerful Honda Fireblade RR-R, a truly remarkable and cutting-edge motorcycle renowned for its superior performance, advanced engineering, and iconic design within the competitive world of high-performance sport bikes. This particular model, the RR variant, represents the pinnacle of Honda's innovative motorcycle development, offering an unparalleled riding experience for enthusiasts and professionals alike, solidifying its esteemed position in the automotive industry. I won't deny it, although I'm starting to lean towards a different brand, but there are still Hondas in the garage. I'll always have Honda in my heart. I know one guy who's a Honda fan and betrayed Honda for Suzuki. He had an F4i and started riding a GSX-R 600. And it's just not even comparable to those. GSX-R 600, I don't know, maybe a 2015, 2014, that kind of year. So I told him that compared to the CBR 600 F4i, it's really a huge difference. But I told him even if you're riding a Suzuki, it's still a Honda at heart. And he said something and I'm not really ashamed. And he just stood there. So I started to worry about that Fireblade because I rode it in Qatar and it was great, it was really fun. We were riding around and I came back and wow, it was awesome, but that motorcycle was really well set up there. By default, the settings were already done there, and we know that on this bike there are a ton of settings. A bit more, just like with any modern super sport superbike, but to set it all up yourself with the semi-active suspension, the maps, the traction control, the wheelie control. Maybe you don't have to be an engineer, but it does take some time. And if you are an engineer, it's like a snap. And if you have a test rider, he just says, I need a bit more of this, a bit more of that. And instead of the engineer clicking through all those settings, you just, with this suspension, you can make it a bit looser on braking or give it more support during acceleration. And he goes, oh, nice, that's good. And we keep riding. And that's how it was. Of course, we also had this cool session where we had an hour-long session and just kept riding around the track, coming in every 10 minutes. I'd come in and ask them to make a click like this, or I'd want to feel what it would be like if they changed it that way. And I really could feel those setting changes. And now I was in BRNO. Some time ago, I was there with Motorrad, and I was riding my R1, which kind of stopped cooperating. In fact, it didn't just stop cooperating, it actually shook my trust in it. And next to it was a Panigale, which I took, I don't even know why. And once I took it, I put on some more slicky tires that I got from the guys there and started riding the Panigale. Ooh, ah, ooh, ow. And I went there on the 12th of June, and for a street bike, it was fast. And there was also a Fireblade there, just for a test ride. And I also took that Fireblade for a spin. But I only took the Fireblade out for 2 sessions. I came back in after 1 session because the chain was too loose and it was terrible to ride, so I had to tighten the chain. And then I went out again and thought, okay, I was riding pretty decently with a Fireblade, but then I looked at my time and it was 2:17. That's a big difference. The Fireblade was on street tires, those Super Corsa SPs or maybe Bridgestone R11S. Yeah, they're very sporty, but still street tires. The Panigale had slicks, but still that's a 5-second gap. That's not much. Actually, that's a lot. You know, I was worried about it, the Fireblade. Because in BRNO, it didn't really impress me that much. Maybe because I didn't ride it long enough, didn't push it hard enough. So that's also why I took it now to Poznan. Since I'm a stickler, I can't just say the Fireblade is rubbish without checking it thoroughly myself. So I brought it here with the Bridgestone slicks that were supposed to go on my R1. But since there's a new Fireblade, it needs to go up against the R1. I put on those slick racing tires, and when I first went out onto the track, it was quite nice, but the gearing was stupidly, incredibly long for the conditions. Because this motorcycle, I don't know if you know, or if anyone knows, I mean, I don't know myself yet. I don't know myself, but I think there's something about measuring something at certain speeds or at certain RPMs. I'm willing to bet that these ridiculously long gear ratios are there to meet some kind of regulation. You know, it's not because it's supposed to go fast, but to meet some standard. To meet the standards, probably at a certain speed or something, it will have low RPMs, and it won't open that valve, and it won't have power, and something like that. Yeah. So these gear ratios are just ridiculously long because, well, I would never have guessed that you rarely even use first gear on the track. And here I could drive with first gear for like 30% of the track. 30% of the track? I mean, the so-called cursed German, well, it was really aggressive in first gear back then, but you could still ride it in first. If I wanted to go really fast, I was actually riding in first gear because this motorcycle is a leader bike. A 600. It's made in such a way that it has that power. 217 horsepower. But to get that, you have to rev it up. The thing I said, this is kind of funny that if you don't rev it, it just doesn't go. It just doesn't go. And what's funniest is, especially in the city when you're riding, the first real kick comes at 6,000 revolutions per minute. When I wasn't riding in the city, it was just, I felt like I was suffocating it. Because you ride, and then, nah. You know what that is? Wow. You look down and suddenly you're over 6,000 revolutions per minute. And then it goes, wow. Then it really opens up the valve. Suddenly everything roars and wow. I really like that the gauges we were changing there. Among other things, one of the gauge setting zone of those gauges starts at 5,000. Yeah, because there's really nothing to look for below that. From 5,000 is where anything starts to happen. And the real driving only begins at 8,000 revolutions per minute. So in the city, well, I'm also no longer the target audience because I've already had my fill of riding sport bikes around the city. I don't consider it risky. But when I was riding in the city, I never even shifted into fourth gear. I mean, maybe I did just to check or to make it a bit quieter, but generally, because of those long gear ratios, in third gear, it can go, I don't know, I don't remember, 220 or 230 kilometers per hour. In first gear, I ride at 170. Yeah, it'll just be noisy and a bit wild, but you can also change that in the settings to make it smoother so you can ride in first gear if you want. Go ahead. So, getting back to the topic of the track, and at first those gear ratios, I thought, damn, come on, don't do this to me in the Fireblade. That's not how it's supposed to be. But then I switched my mindset that I would just ride it, just rev it up. And so lap after lap, lap after lap. Later, Rafa took it for a ride. And Rafa rode it and said, damn, what a cool motorcycle. That kind of unlocked me a bit because I had some negative thoughts. They were building up around it, so I was like, yeah, really, it's nice, it's nice, it's nice. Because I remembered that this is a cool motorcycle, it's a new leader bike. And that's it. So I went out for a little session and I decided that I would finally give it a bit of gas. I would, but I didn't do it on the main straight. Because on the main straight, the exhaust is pointed toward the city. And the most famous thing is that in Poznan, you can't ride a Fireblade at full throttle. The stock exhaust has 108 dB and left leg. Thank you. Goodbye. So if you want to ride a Fireblade, there are only certain places where you can really open the throttle because the exhaust is pointed toward the air, for example. But on the main straight, you have to shift up the gears. But I did a session like that and it felt pretty good. I was riding on the straight, I was shifting up to keep the noise down, and suddenly what? 3, 9, there, 3, 2, 4. Never in my life have I gone so fast in Poznan using only half the gearbox. Using only half the gearbox, my gear ratios were totally messed up. So often I was driving in second gear, and second gear, for example, coming out of Sławeniak, it just wouldn't pull at all. So if you could put in different gear ratios there and somehow find, I don't know, some kind of good, an extra killer or something, so you could really open it up on the straight, then honestly, well, someone with more experience than me, or if it were my own motorcycle, then 3.6 is definitely within reach, if not better, because this motorcycle is just so stable. It goes so brilliantly. Once I set it up again, I had forgotten how I had it set up back in Qatar. When I clicked through the settings, it just rides so well. A few times it even turned in too quickly for me, so I ended up going over the inside that. Once, even just a little bit, barely, but I did go off, but you just ride with it, you lean into the corner with it and tip it in. Even more, even harder than you plan, and it just, boom, that's turning, just like the word turns, how well Gorka used that word, and this bike really turns, and that one also turns. So the Fireblade turns, it really knows how to take a corner. And at the same time, it's as stable as it gets right now. Probably no other R1. I haven't ridden the new one for a long time, but yeah, Panigale, we know about that. It wobbles in every direction, which is fun. The GSX-R is also heading in the direction of the Panigale with a pretty flexible frame, and it can sway quite a bit too. She's peering through the fairing. What is she filming for? BMW, same thing. The V4 is also incredible, designed to turn very quickly. So I'm left with just the R1 for comparison. Oh, and the Aprilia RS4, sorry. The Aprilia will also be stable and will turn very well too. But the Fireblade, not only does it turn very well, maybe it'll turn just a bit worse than some others we'll see in the comparison test, but at the same time, it gives you such a sense of safety and confidence that you just won't crash. Today when I was riding T39, then I went out and rode T39 again. I gave it a bit more gas in the straight. Yeah, I saw that run in the footage. Yeah. Well, it was like this. I went out with this guy and he was blocking me a bit. When I wanted to overtake him, I saw that it was already the last session or something, so I probably didn't see it anymore. He didn't notice, he just didn't notice. So those 2 or 3 laps, I just gave it some gas on that straight. I overtook that guy, did 1 fast lap, and I was about, damn, but it goes! But since it was the last session, and not my motorcycle, I'm the ultimate kind of person. When I had that thought, okay. Now when I got to the beans, I was embarrassed because that was the moment when you have to head back to the pit. And it turned out that when I gave it gas on that straight, I did the same lap, 39.3. So this is a motorcycle where you don't have to focus on pushing harder. Well, obviously you do have to focus. But I did that first 39. I did it when I felt like I was riding with a really big safety margin. I felt like I was going fast, but it wasn't like I was trying to push insanely hard. And later, when it seemed like I was really pushing, I was actually going just as fast. So it's the kind of motorcycle that you don't have to push it there. You just need to focus on riding smoothly and it'll do the rest. And it turns out that the smoother you are, the more it rewards you for it. You'll just be rolling on the throttle calmly and entering the corner smoothly. Because by the end of the session, it wasn't that I couldn't use the throttle lights, just that the gears are long and I couldn't open it up. So for example, I made a lot of use of the entry into the corner and the exit from the corner. There, I was showing almost 60 degrees. You know, the lean angle, I mean, you can do a lot more, right? But when you're going that fast, maybe it's not always necessary because, well, but this is the kind of motorcycle you just get on and ride. And I didn't feel any, fear. So I suspect that that kind of fear, like for example, when I ride the Panigale and whoa, you sit down, whoa, things were happening. But on the Panigale, I never went that fast. I just don't remember now. I mean, the Panigales I rode were also race bikes, not mine, expensive and all that. But I think, let me recall, I think I also rode on slicks on a street Panigale, and I definitely didn't go that fast. Generally, when I rode leader bikes on the street, up until now, I always rode on street tires, 44 to 45. Just like with the Street Fighter, and on slicks, from what I remember, it was more like 41. That was kind of a safe limit. And here, low 39S, still easily beatable. And I think that fear, those emotions, they would come, only after another second or two, the bike would really start to work. And even now, at the end, when I gave it gas, it already started to lift the front wheel, Right here, the chicane, the handlebars already started to shake a bit. So these things are going to start happening. You just don't need to go much, much faster. And I like that. It's just a very, very fast motorcycle, very, very stable, very, very cleverly built. And to really make use of it, well, that's how it is. But there's also one problem with the Fireblade. The problem with the Fireblade, wait, am I still recording this or not? Yes, I am. The problem with the Fireblade is that, first, it's loud in its stock mode. I still don't know if any manufacturer will manage to find an exhaust for it. One, that because it's not just in Poznan where it'll be a problem, it'll be an issue at many tracks. It's loud in its stock mode. Second, it's been around for a short time, and so far there isn't really that rush, for people to own it. I see that there's even one person who's seriously interested in it, and an amateur might just buy such a model, get on it and ride. But I know, and maybe he really won't measure for a very, 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 very long time without needing to touch anything. But let's remember that people who ride on the track are gadget lovers. I'm a gadget lover too. If I already have a racing motorcycle, I'd want different sets here. Clip-ons are not a problem, but I'd like to have a choice of sprockets. For example, bigger ones. So there would be different manufacturers of various sprockets, different manufacturers of fairings, just things for the motorcycle. Tang grip and even simple things like that, right? And as long as these motorcycles don't start being used a lot on the track, don't start being used a lot, then these things won't be made because there won't be a market for them. So basically, what's needed, Iceland scenario, is that suddenly everyone rushes to buy the Fireblade, which is unlikely. The other scenario is that some kind of cup is not even necessarily in Poland, but in Europe or so, that these Fireblades, start showing up on the tracks, and then once they're on the tracks, used parts will start to appear, and there'll be some knowledge about what and how to do things. So yeah, but this Fireblade is pretty cool. But to really push its limits, man. A lot of water will have to flow under the bridge. A lot of slicks will be worn out. A lot of slicks will be wasted. They'll just get shredded there, just from twisting the throttle stupidly, not from opening it early. We'll change it. On the Fireblade, we will proceed to change it. Let us now conjugate it properly. So there's a little squeak, so we don't get a black flag. No, just changing the position. I don't have to change anything else. It was hilarious. It was adorable. Fantastic. There's a little thread. I don't know if this particular unit is defective or something, but I wanted to change it because once I put on the stickies, I wanted to switch the gears so they'd be like that. And I look, oh! All you have to do is unscrew the linkage and screw it in at the other spot, and the gears will be reversed. So I screwed it in. I want to tighten it, so I keep turning and turning and turning, but it just won't tighten. I look, and there's a hole, but there isn't a thread. Almost, but if you want, just tap a thread. Maybe it's some badge. That's impossible, just impossible. Yeah, that's weird. So it's either you tap a thread yourself, or you have to take that little piece out and fix it. The quick shifter might not want to work or something. Well, I don't know, but I put it on anyway. And as for the position of the rear sets, the position on this motorcycle is also kind of... They said it themselves. I remember they showed the difference between the old one and the new one. This is the position like on a racing motorcycle. When we ride on the street, my hands don't really hurt, fortunately, but we even joked that whoever sat on this motorcycle, the clip-ons are so low and so wide that I was laughing that this is a bike after Marquez. Because Marquez, you can see from his bike, he has the handlebars set super wide, so maybe that's what they decided. But I also, on a racing bike, set the clip-ons really wide. I wouldn't change anything, except maybe at some point I'd put on racing ones so as not to mess it up. But I also think I wouldn't really save much weight that way. I'd really play around a lot with the geometry and those settings. That's something I'd definitely explore. I'd be looking to improve it even more to make it better. And I'd have to practice, because the truth is that even though it really handles lightly and nicely, it's heavier than the Panigale or the BMW. It's supposedly a small difference, but when you're already riding really fast, you want to flick it quickly, just throw it around. Well, it's, a trade-off, right? Honestly, I think I prefer to have a big margin of stability and that sense of security, because, those other bikes will also grip, they'll also go fast. But it's about your mindset that this one just feels like concrete on sleep and on supports. Yeah. Oh, I feel safe, nothing's happening at all, I can ride much faster. Yeah. That specific gearing setup is quite something. That gearing, yeah. Plus 10 in the back, minus 1 in the front, and then you can ride. Yeah, for me, brakes are great. Everything is great. Everything's great. Everything is fantastic. Really nice assembly. I don't know which display options I would choose for myself. The one at the end was too fancy. And I wish it had a built-in GPS lap timer. I don't know if you can buy a GPS module for it, because if we wanted the lap timer on the dashboard, you had to click it, and I never remembered to click. I crossed that line, meters in, entered the zone. Oh, I was supposed to click on minute 46. That's weak, yeah. So I'd like there to be such a module, and I'd like there to be those Fireblades, and for there to be, someone to ride with, so that there would be probably on Monday. Yeah. If you want more, just ask, and I'll answer you. I don't know if I have enough material to cover these talks, but that's it. Yeah. Take care.